Hi everybody, this is Ruth Royal from Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm really delighted to be here today with Victoria Barry Woods, who's HR and Talent Acquisition Partner at Euroapi. Victoria, lovely to meet you.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us a bit about what Euroapi does.
Well, Euroapi is one of our manufacturing, production and development sites for active pharmaceutical ingredients. So they're the active part of the medicines that you take. So we work with a range of organisations to provide active ingredient solutions. All of our products are made, developed and produced in the UK and Europe.
That's incredible.
And in the UK, we have about 250 people in total, and all of our manufacturing development capability, quality, so labs, everything is actually based at that site. So it's quite a large site on Rookwood Way.
Gosh, that's amazing. I had no idea. That's fascinating. And I mean, that just seems to me like there must be so many different jobs that people do there. Would you tell us a bit perhaps about, I don't know, the different departments and how they fit together?
Yeah, so in terms of Euroapi, I mean, lots of people know kind of Cambridge, Oxford, London Triangle in terms of STEM.
Yeah.
But actually in the Haverhill area, which is Suffolk, there are lots of companies that hire similar skill sets to us. So it's actually a really buzzing industrial park. But in terms of us and what we hire, engineering is a huge focus. So we have lots
Right.
of electrical engineers, chemical engineers, mechanical engineers, people who either work in production, so that's hands-on in the manufacturing process,
Right.
or people who maintain the plant in operation, so ensuring that everything works and is up to regulatory standards. And then we also have engineers that actually work on the process with our clients. So they have a product that they want to scale up, for instance, for clinical development. And we have engineers that actually work with them on the process. So how can they do that? How can they manufacture ready for clinical trials? So we have
Wow.
engineers really spread across all areas within our business. We then also have other really important functions as well. So we have quality, which is quality assurance, our QP, so our qualified people or qualified person is the actual job title, and also quality control. So
Gosh.
that's just making sure that all of the regulatory requirements are met. So they work in the labs. So our QC analysts, for instance, will work in the labs testing products and making sure that they meet the good manufacturing practice regulations. And then we also have people who work in QA as well. So that's quite a big department. And then also QPs, I mentioned earlier, so qualified person. So that's test and release to make sure that we can release product in the country. So in terms of quality, that's also quite a big department. We also have secondary operations and warehousing.
Right.
So that's all of our packaging, labelling, and also we have temperature controlled shipping capabilities as well. So that area of the business tends to be rare diseases, specific products that they're working with. So that's a smaller part of the business, but it's still a very busy area for us. We do also have some head office functions as well, so finance, HR, PMO as well, so project management office and strategy, business development. So we do also have those functions, but they're a bit smaller in terms of the UK.
Gosh, that is absolutely fascinating to hear all about. I wondered, perhaps first of all, thinking about the engineering side of things, how do people sort of come to your company? Do they come as qualified engineers, or will you take them on and train them? What's the process for that?
So a lot of the hires, I've been with the business since 2021, which is when we started going through the separation process. So we actually separated from a global pharmaceutical company called Sanofi. So when we separated from Sanofi, that's moving from an 80,000 strong global organisation to one which is about 3,600 across 6 key sites. We do have international hubs as well, but they're actually a lot smaller. So it's about 3,600. So in that process of separation that's happened over the last 2 years, really, we've had to focus on a lot of experienced hires in terms of bringing people into the business. So quite often people will come in and they'll be degree level educated from an engineering point of view, or they might have done an apprenticeship.
Right.
and then achieve like a level 3 qualification, for instance. And they'll come into the business and they would have had some hands-on commercial experience, either gained in the pharmaceutical industry or similar regulated industries,
Yeah.
like other manufacturing environments, like food, for instance, is a good
Oh,
example.
that's really interesting to think about
Um,
those sort of transferable skills that you might have trained as an engineer in one environment, but the fact that the regulation side makes it possible to transfer to a different environment with sort of those, I guess, the sort of strong sort of protocols and regulations that you have to follow.
Yeah, and in this area as well, the geography, we do have a big farmer footprint, but we also have a really strong manufacturing footprint as well across Suffolk. So it means that we can look at a range of different backgrounds and skills, and companies really that share similar I suppose career paths to us.
Yeah.
So it really helps us in terms of being able to find the right people. So a lot of the last few years have been really looking at experienced hires.
Yeah.
We also have an apprentice, for instance, in maintenance.
Oh, wow.
So she has just recently started her apprenticeship with West Suffolk. So she'll be doing her level 3 qualification, and then obviously assisted by the maintenance team in terms of her hands-on training as well. But she actually came through a different route. So she was working with us in secondary operations and then started to work with the maintenance teams to support them, and then made that transition over as an apprentice. So she'll be completing her apprenticeship over the next two and a bit years, I suppose. So people have come into the business in different ways. What we want to do in the future is have more opportunities for students and apprentices to come into the business, because it is really important to us. And it is, going back even a few years ago, it was something that was a lot more prevalent on the site.
Yeah.
So we're kind of moving to a period after the separation from Sanofi where we'll start to look at more career opportunities for people who are more in their early careers phase rather than
Oh,
experienced.
fantastic. Oh, that is really good to hear, and really lovely to hear a story as well about how somebody's developed through the company and progressed too. And what about on the sort of the pharmaceutical side? What sort of training and skills do people have in that environment? I'm presuming that that must be incredibly specialist.
Well, we're a very specific site because we're a good manufacturing practice site, which means that from a regulatory point of view, our standard operating procedures, our paperwork, our adherence to quality regulations, we're a regulated industry, but GMP is very specific in terms of what's required
Right.
at the site, and also all of our other sites in terms of the regulations that they would adhere to as well. So because we make and manufacture and develop pharmaceutical products, there are restrictions that go with those regulations that we need to meet. So it's a very structured environment, and some people, even coming from different types of pharma backgrounds, wouldn't necessarily have GMP experience.
Right.
And so actually a lot of people are very attracted to the site because that's something you can gain. But obviously, it is always something that we like to look for in people, particularly if they're coming into quality, for instance. It's very helpful.
And with that, I appreciate that obviously there'll be specific activities and processes that are associated with that GMP status. But does that mean that then there are things that almost sort of characteristics as well that you're looking for from your staff, as well as like the hard skills around their technical skills? Are there sort of softer skills in terms of characteristics that you kind of think make people especially suitable for working in your environment?
Well, it differs depending on the role in terms of what's required, but what underpins how we assess soft skills are our key values,
Yeah.
um, which actually were launched with the new business because
Oh,
we
well.
we only listed on the Euronext as an independent business in May 2022. So we launched our new values. So I suppose it gives a bit of an insight into the process, because part of the interview process for all roles is the technical assessment. What
Right.
skills do you have, whether that's education, experience. That's the assessment that we would do on the
Okay.
technical side. Um, on the values side, that's what we're looking for in terms of softer skills. And just to give you a few examples, taking ownership as a smaller business, an independent business outside of a global pharma now, we expect everybody to take responsibility. And that's particularly important in terms of a regulatory environment, because when people see things or observe things, or when they fill out paperwork, it's all about taking responsibility
Yeah.
for your role, and also making sure that we meet the requirements of the industry. And that's a big personal responsibility as well, because there's only, so many things that you can do in your job without sometimes there being things that need to be corrected, need to be looked at again. So I think taking ownership is a really important soft skill, because it means that you take ownership for your own responsibilities, but also that you're mindful of others in terms of what they're doing as well. I think the other one is around, in terms of values, is around driven by our clients. So our
Right.
clients are our commercial clients that we deliver to, because we develop, manufacture and produce on behalf of third parties. So we're a contract development and manufacturing organisation. But we have to be driven by our clients and make sure that we deliver to our clients. But really, the end client, at the end of all of the, I suppose, the production, manufacturing or development process, is also the patient, because this is the active part of the medicines that you take. That's what we
Right.
specialise in,
Wow.
both in terms of our established APIs as well as APIs that might be under development with new clients. So you have to think about your client in terms of what your client needs and wants, as well as, the end client, which is ultimately the patient, in terms of making sure that they get access to medicines.
Gosh, what a just a fascinating setup, and also the opportunities that it sounds like sort of are coming through for people locally, as you moved into this sort of new business model as well. How that will sort of free up additional opportunities in terms of, you say, moving from kind of perhaps more workforce development and recruitment of people, and helping them develop, as well as sort of obviously having the existing levels of expertise that you must need in such a totally specialist environment. What do you particularly enjoy about working at Euro API?
I enjoyed the change that we went through, because if you think about it, you're coming from a very established, well-known brand, and you're
Yeah,
creating a brand new business. And we're not
yeah,
only a brand new business, but we're a brand new business that does different things, in the sense that we're a contract development and manufacturing organization, which is really in the chemicals industry, which is a really important change. And also, we're more commercially driven, because we're working with a range of third parties and clients. So that's very different to working necessarily in a global pharma. So the change was really attractive in terms of going through that. And joining what would be the creation of a brand new business. I think it gives you a lot of opportunity in terms of the types of
yeah,
projects and process improvements and different things that you can get involved in, that it would be more hard to do that perhaps in a bigger organization, maybe one that would be more established, for instance. So that's what attracted me to the
yeah,
organization. It's the story of the organization. I think that the other thing is we fulfill a really important need within the industry, because when you look at active pharmaceutical ingredients, so the active part of the medicines that you take, most of those, or most of the market is dominated by companies who have their operations in Asia. So having products
wow,
that are made and manufactured in the UK and Europe enable us to fulfill a need, which is that reinventing active pharmaceutical ingredient solutions for our customers. So being able to actually see the manufacturing development process, and being able to have everything on site and have exposure to that, and fulfilling that really important need from a market point of view,
yeah.
is I suppose what makes the job meaningful.
Oh, that
You
sounds
really are doing something
fascinating.
important.
And for you, how did you sort of get into HR, Victoria?
Well, I didn't actually get into HR originally, so let me think back. 2007, I graduated. I studied law at King's in London, and
Yeah,
decided, I didn't really want to go down that route, and didn't really know what to do. So did the normal thing in terms of speaking to lots of graduate recruiters, and just stumbled across recruitment. So working for agencies, went to a few interviews and other things. And so I decided that I was just going to try recruitment and go and
yeah,
work for an agency. So I spent 7 years doing that for a company called Aston Carter that was then acquired by Allegis Group, which is what was at
Right.
the time the fourth largest staffing company in the world.
Wow.
So part of that kind of journey was working with loads of different organizations on their recruitment needs. And what it taught you really is a much broader understanding of business, because you'd be working across different areas, fulfilling different needs, speaking to loads of different people. So it gave me a really good breadth of skills in terms of understanding business, but also being really motivated.
Yeah.
Because you have to generate your own business, you have to generate your own candidates, and that as a process is really about you as an individual. So it gave me
Yeah.
great skills.
Wow.
And you know, so, and I worked around some amazing people, you know, in terms of different backgrounds. And so I spent 7 years doing that. And then when I had my first son, I decided, you know what, I can't be in London anymore.
Yeah.
So, you know, because the commute is, you know, it's very difficult. The trains never work. So I decided, right, I need to find something in Cambridge. And just at that point in time, AstraZeneca was moving their headquarters to Cambridge. So that
Oh,
was a
wow.
massive, you know, a huge story in terms of a global company moving its headquarters to Cambridge. And
Yeah.
so I joined a really lovely team, and we were managing it was called the Cambridge footprint in terms of recruitment
Yeah.
for the Cambridge site, and making sure that we were working across loads of different areas and direct sourcing in terms of going out to market and finding candidates directly. So I did that for 2 years. And then I worked for a security consultancy, a company called Dardan, which is probably quite well known actually in
Yeah.
the area. And I did that. So much smaller business, about 500, UK based only. And then in the kind of process of managing recruitment and talent in terms of end-to-end process for them, my manager at the time said to me, okay, well, why don't you do your CIPD level 5? And I said, oh, I don't know really if I want to do this. And we were looking for a while for a
Mm.
HR manager. And he said, well, you know, I think you could do it. And I'd never even considered,
Yeah.
outside of talent acquisition recruitment, that, you know, that would even be a path that I would go down. But, you know, in the typical sense, when someone actually, you know, believes in you,
Yeah.
you go, okay, well, no, I'll give this a go. And I had a really supportive team, particularly one of the senior HR advisors who was really experienced, who kind of supported me through my learning. And then I started doing
Wow.
casework and other stuff that I'd never done before, did my qualification. And then, you know, and then what I started to see in the market was that you had HR and talent acquisition partners. So actually the two combined,
Oh,
mostly for
brilliant.
businesses that were smaller as
Yeah.
well. So they would probably need to combine both of the roles because they wouldn't have necessarily the headcount to have HR and talent. So it ended up being a skill set that was quite attractive without me necessarily planning that
Yeah.
that was the route that I was going to go. And now in this role, I manage recruitment and talent acquisition for the whole site in the UK.
Wow.
But I also support my colleagues with casework and also project work from a HR perspective. So I have those two things now, as opposed to being in a position where I'm just one or the other. So
Oh, I
it was
love hearing
mainly,
about how you did that, merging
yeah,
those two skills.
yeah, it's completely, you know, it's completely down to other people's sponsorship, not anything to do with design, but it just goes to show, if you have someone who, you know, who actually believes in you and will sponsor you, what a
Yeah.
difference that actually makes in your career.
Oh, I think that's so true. And just finally, sort of to reflect on Victoria, really on that note, obviously, like you say, that sort of more kind of happened rather than by design. If you were to go back and sort of have a conversation with your younger self, what piece of careers advice would you give yourself, do you think, starting out?
Uh, do you know what? I think, and I can't be the only one in this position, you know, from a family point of view, you know, it was very important for me to go to university. I was the first person to do that, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I think the idea was, you know, you do a proper degree, you either do law or you do medicine, you do something that's proper. And actually, as I discovered when I got older, working with so many different people in recruitment, working with so many different candidates across so many different areas, what I realised is actually, unless there is a specific qualification that you need to do to really become what you want to become. So, for instance, you couldn't become an engineer without an engineering
Yeah,
qualification. You couldn't become a doctor without, a degree in medicine. So, unless there's something really specific that you have to do to get to the career that you want to get to, I would say wholeheartedly to do something you really enjoy.
yeah,
And actually, if you don't enjoy it in terms of your studies, or if you don't want to do that right now, I've seen so many people that actually do things later in life.
yeah.
So they go out, they work, they do other things, and then they discover what it is that they want to do. Because I genuinely didn't know. And I spent most of my time at university just not really knowing a way out in terms of what I'd chosen, but knowing that it wasn't what I wanted to do. So
Oh,
I
that must have been
think
tough.
I would just be braver, to do something either I really love, or to wait and go and get some experience. And then, it does become apparent in terms of what you want to do later in life.
Oh, Victoria, that's an absolutely brilliant note to end on. Thanks so much for sharing that with us, and thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks very much.